Hey dudes and dudettes, I'm Derek with GameSomniac, and welcome to another episode of the Gamers Initiative, a video game podcast for the gaming elite. Halloween is almost upon us, and while the age-old tradition of popping corn and watching the old horror classics on the TV is great for normal people, I thought I'd spend this episode talking about 10 kick-ass horror games you'll want to play through the month of October to really get into the Halloween spirit. Now, let me make this clear right from the get-go. This list is in no way, shape, or form ranking these games from best to worst or anything like that. If you want a ranked list of best to worst style videos, then take your ass to Watch Mojo's channel. Half of the time their lists suck and they don't know what the hell they're talking about anyway. So first up on our list is a new game released earlier this year and is easily one of my favorites. I present to you all Nightcry. Nightcry is a survival horror video game developed by Nude Maker and published by Playism Games for Microsoft Windows, PlayStation Vita, iOS, and Android. The PC version of the game was released on March 29, 2016. However, release dates for the other version of the game have yet to be announced. Nightcry is directed and written by the Clock Tower series creator Hifumi Kono and is considered a spiritual successor to the original series. In Nightcry, the player guides through characters through each of their own scenarios, which when tied together creates the overall story of the game. Much like Clock Tower The First Fear and Clock Tower, the game features a deformed monster wielding a giant pair of scissors that constantly and consistently stalks the player. The game also forces the player to make certain decisions that will either kill the player or affect the outcome of the game.
Phantasmagoria.
Phantasmagoria is an interactive movie point-and-click adventure game released by Sierra Online and designed by Roberta Williams for MS-DOS and Microsoft Windows. Released on August 24, 1995, it tells the story of Adrienne, a writer who moves into a remote mansion and finds herself terrorized by supernatural forces. Made at the peak of popularity for interactive movie games, it featured live-action actors and footage both during cinematic scenes and within the three-dimensional rendered environments of the game itself. Now, the gameplay for Phantasmagoria heavily involves you completing various tasks in order to get through each chapter. You mainly view things from third person with occasional first-person views at times. You try to find various items, some of which reveal important clues to what is really happening to you. However, finding these items can either be very easy or downright fucking frustrating. While Phantasmagoria was well received by gamers, it was noted for its extreme use of violence and gore, sexual and adult-themed content.
Condemned Criminal Origins.
Condemned Criminal Origins, known in Japan as Condemned Psychocrime, is a first-person survival horror video game developed by Monolith Productions and published by Sega. It was launched worldwide in 2005 on the Xbox 360 with a Microsoft Windows version released later in 2006. Condemned Criminal Origins places a heavy emphasis on melee combat and puzzle solving, including searching for fingerprints and gathering evidence. Now, the game is set in the fictional American city of Metro, and you assume the role of Ethan Thomas, who's a crime scene investigation agent with the FBI's Serial Crime Unit. Now, Ethan goes around traveling the dark sides of the city, and his journey takes him through a number of condemned buildings as he searches for the one who framed him for murder, this elusive serial killer X. And along the way, you must guide Ethan and use his investigative intuition and technology to examine evidence left behind by SKX. Will you be the one to lead Ethan to the truth, or die at the hands of the crazed denizens of Metro?
Silent Hill.
Now, what Halloween season would be complete without the Silent Hill series? Silent Hill changed the world of survival horror gaming with the release of the series' first installment in 1999, and has since been a driving force throughout the history of the genre. Silent Hill is a Japanese survival horror video game franchise developed and published by Konami. Now, the first 4 games in the series, Silent Hill 1 through 4, were developed by an internal group called Team Silent. The later 5 games, which include Origins, Homecoming, Shattered Memories, Downpour, and Book of Memories, were developed by other unrelated groups. The Silent Hill franchise has expanded to include various print pieces, 2 feature films, and spin-off video games. If you're going to delve into the hellacious nightmares Silent Hill has to offer this Halloween, then we recommend playing Silent Hill Origins, Silent Hill 3, Silent Hill Shattered Memories, and for those that still have it, PT, the Silent Hills playable teaser.
Resident Evil.
Not many of you will find this next entry as a shocker, and that's because it goes without saying that Resident Evil, known as Biohazard in Japan, is by far one of the most intense series in the world of survival horror. The franchise focuses around a series of video games, but has since branched out into comic books, novels, live-action films, animated sequels to the games, and a variety of associated merchandise such as action figures, plush toys, all that fun stuff. Now, while Resident Evil in its later years strayed away from the horror genre, there are still some great installments well deserved of being played this Halloween. Our recommendations out of these installments include Resident Evil 0, Resident Evil HD Remake, Resident Evil 2, Resident Evil 3 Nemesis, Resident Evil Revelation, and Resident Evil 7 Beginning Hour.
Outlast.
Next on our list we have Outlast, and this game is absolutely sick, twisted, and outright fucking disturbing. Outlast is a first-person survival horror video game developed and published by Red Barrels. The game revolves around a freelance investigative journalist, Miles Upshur, who decides to investigate a remote psychiatric hospital situated deep in the mountains of Lake County, Colorado. Needless to say, shit gets real when the whole facility gets overtaken by its very inhabitants, the psychotic and insane prisoner guinea pigs of the Murkoff Corporation's hellacious experiments. The Whistleblower DLC centers on Wayland Park, the man who led Miles there in the first place. Now, both campaigns feature explicit scenes of violence and gore with extreme cases of nope and fuck this shit I'm out. Now, the question you have to ask yourself is, will you brave the dark and guide both Miles and Wayland through the psychosadistic horrors of Mount Massive this Halloween season? Because the better question would be, can you do it all in one piece?
Obscure.
Obscure is a survival horror video game developed by Hydrovision Entertainment and published by Dreamcatcher Interactive. The game has a two-player cooperative mode that allows the player to complete the campaign with a friend. Obscure also has this awesome feature which allows players to combine items, like for example, taping a flashlight to a firearm. It's actually something that some critics, including XPlay, have stated that this was the only redeeming quality, and mocked ID's Doom 3 for not implementing such a simple concept. Each character in the game has a special ability, although none of these abilities are necessary to complete the game. Each character can still perform the same physical acts, even if it takes some characters longer or causes them to exert more effort than others. If any of the characters die during the adventure, the player may simply continue with those remaining. Now, Obscure 2 takes place 2 years after the events of the first game. The kids who survived are now at college and living normal lives. They discover a strange plant on campus and things start to go awry. The game was released for Microsoft Windows, PlayStation 2, Wii, and PlayStation Portable. The franchise was abruptly halted due to the closure of Hydrovision, who had intended to do a sequel and possibly a prequel. However, Final Exam is supposedly a reboot of the series and was released for the PlayStation Network, Xbox Live, and Microsoft Windows in November of 2013.
Fatal Frame.
Fatal Frame, titled Zero in Japan and Project Zero in Europe, is a survival horror video game series created and primarily developed by Koei Tecmo. Debuting in 2001 with the first entry in the series for the PlayStation 2, the series consists of 5 main entries. The series is set in 1980s Japan, with each entry focusing on a location beset by hostile supernatural events. In each scenario, the characters involved in the present investigation use camera obscura, objects created by Dr. Kunihiko Aso that can capture and pacify spirits. Now, the series draws on staple elements of Japanese horror and is noted for its frequent use of female protagonists. Out of this series, I strongly recommend you guys knock out the first 3 games: Fatal Frame, Fatal Frame 2, Crimson Butterfly, and Fatal Frame 3, The Tormented. Being the stronger games of the series, they will surely give you guys something to scream about this Halloween.
Siren.
Siren is a series of survival horror stealth games consisting of 3 installments. The game is developed by SIE Japan Studio and Project Siren. The game is published by Sony Computer Entertainment. Now, while this is one horror series with fewer releases than most, each release is terrifying in its own special way. Out of the 3, I'm going to suggest that you guys play at least Siren Blood Curse and Forbidden Siren 2. The PS3 Siren game was my first introduction to the series, and it's a reimagining of the original title, which is why I'm putting it over the first game. But don't let that discourage you. I highly recommend binging on the entire Siren collective. I'm sure the corpse people of Hanunda would be very happy to see you.
Slender.
Even if you're not a horror aficionado, you've probably heard the name of this next title somewhere. It's a series that has produced some of the greatest jump scare reactions in YouTube history. It's also become quite the controversial topic as of late. Of course, talking about our dear friend Slender. For all of those who don't know, and what fucking rock have you been living under, Slender Man was created by Something Awful Forums user Eric Knudsen, aka Victor Surge. Stories of the Slender Man commonly feature him stalking, abducting, or traumatizing people, particularly children. The games are based on the same figure who is depicted as a tall man with a white face with no facial features who wears an all-black suit with a red tie around the neck area. He is known for the ominous abduction of countless children in the dark, mysterious settings such as deep forests and abandoned buildings. While the Slender video game market has become oversaturated with mediocre attempts at capturing the character's essence, Slender does have a few kick-ass games worth playing this Halloween. While it's not the very first Slender video game, you'll definitely want to start playing Slender the 8 Pages, and then follow up with Slender Man's Shadow. Both games, although created by two different dev teams, are almost seamless in gameplay and control. While Slender the 8 Pages is a one-map, one-level game, Slender Man Shadows is a game with multiple maps and scenarios, all parallel to one another, but in the end, creating one singular story. Slender Man Shadows even contains references to the original game, Slender. Outside of these two series, I will also recommend Haunt, the real Slender game, which the last time I checked, all versions of the game had become very hard to find. There was a redeveloped version of the Haunt game that's been released on Steam for free entitled Haunted Memories, but I didn't really like that version of the game. I still prefer the original version. If you guys can find it, I highly recommend you guys playing it. Now this next Slender title I was really reluctant to even including, but I do believe it will bring your Slender experience full circle. So I'm going to go ahead and recommend that you guys check out Slender the Arrival. It's Parsec Productions' sequel to the original Slender game. It's a really fun, although very short Slender game that really opens the player up to just how big the Slenderverse really is. It's not the first game either to introduce Slender's proxies, but it is the first game to really utilize these enemies efficiently. So there you have it, kiddies, 10 kick-ass horror games that you should be playing this Halloween season. Now I know the scares might seem very, very real, but it's okay. Just keep repeating to yourself, it's only a game. And until next time, I'm your host Derek with GameSomniac, and this has been the Gamers Initiative, a video game podcast for the gaming elite.